This behaviour defies all the rules of nature. And it's not a one-off case. But this is not a new species of uber-aggressive fighting rodent. These rats weren't born with a death wish. No, scientists think that this bizarre behaviour might be brought about from a run-in with something altogether stranger. It's quite possible that these rodents aren't acting in their right minds. They've been hijacked. Hijacked by a parasite. Toxoplasma gondii, a tiny, single-celled organism that lives in the rodent's brain. Here, it meddles with the neurons to render the rat completely fearless. But why? What possible benefit could it be to the parasite to give the rat a death wish? You see, the ultimate aim for Toxoplasma is to get into a cat.
What's unique about this parasite is that it can only sexually reproduce inside the gut of a cat. What it needs to do, its life cycle, its evolutionary pressure, its need, is to get from one cat to another cat. And the question is, how does a tiny parasite with no legs, no means of moving on its own, how does it get all the way from one cat to another cat?
Mind control. Toxoplasma makes rats its rodent slaves. Here's how it works. Toxoplasma's offspring exit the cat in its feces. The rat or mouse then eats those feces. Once embedded in the rodent's brain, the parasite does its thing, significantly lowering the rat's inhibitions, making it less cautious and more likely to get eaten. Et voila! The life cycle is complete.
Back again for another video. The video you just watched is the interlude into what I want to describe in this video. Today's video will be about the spiritual Toxoplasmosis gondii. Where do I start? A lot of you are not familiar probably with Toxoplasmosis. It is a protozoan parasite that seeks to take control of its host, its initial host, and to get to the further host in order to reach sexual maturity, in order to have that host then defecate and transmit it on to another host again, right? That is the life cycle of Toxoplasmosis gondii. It is found mostly in rodents and cats. But it is not indicative just to felines and cats and rodents. This is something that can also spread to humans, but it does not function in the same way that it does in humans as it does in cats. It does not reach sexual maturity in humans. It just causes a lot of problems because it's trying to find where the gut, the atmosphere of the feline gut is in this human, which of course does not exist. But not to bore you with my microbiology lesson here, what I'm talking about in regards to the spiritual Toxoplasmosis is that of which we see in the BW. This happens with other races of women as well, except for they have a different type of parasite that does similar things. But this is more specifically geared to our women. Why I frame it in the way I do is because I was having a conversation just recently and I was trying to describe how the intergenerational curses and the things that jump from person to person operate. They often operate kind of like, I was first describing it as another type of parasite. It is a fungus by the name of Cordyceps unilaterarius. And this fungus is one that is parasitic to insects specifically. And what it does is it hijacks the brain of the host, and it causes it to find the highest point that it can find and then latch onto it, and then it makes it wait until it dies while it dissolves its internal organs to produce proteins and necessary sugars that it needs to survive. It then fruits into fruiting bodies outside of the head and sometimes the back of the insect, sometimes the abdomen, sometimes all over. They have different types. But what it does is it then starts to create the fruiting bodies, like I said, in order to create spores. And these spores are released into the wind and thus starts the cycle again as it finds its new host. That's how I was going to describe it the first time. But I want to liken it more to the Toxoplasmosis gondii. And this is because of how it operates. As you've seen from the video that I put up before this, that the rodents were very violent towards the cats. They were very malicious towards the cats. They had no inhibition, as the video says, no fear, no qualms, no things to think about in regards to their own life. This is oftentimes how I see the BW. The BW is very vicious towards the black men. It is very, this is the wild BW, by the way. It is very malicious towards the black man, but this is for a reason. It is all, most people believe that it is a systematic reason to destroy the black family. And I agree, but they look at it a little wrong, in my opinion. Or maybe I'm just bringing another perception. I can't necessarily say that it is wrong, but it is a perception in which that it likens this to a disease, a parasite, because that's exactly what happens. These women, they look for hosts. They look for hosts in order to reach their sexual maturity with, to bring this parasite over to another. And this host is the man, a man. A lot of times, like I said in this, I like to liken the man to the cat. The cat is the intended host, because while there are other things that this can infect, the intended host is nonetheless the cat, because the cat has the environment necessary in order for this thing to be spread on further. This is no different than the men. The men create the structure necessary in order for these things to perpetuate into the future, into the next generation of hosts, right? This is how it jumps from generation to generation. But there are ways to defeat these things. And I have learned how to defeat these things. And I might make a standalone video about how to defeat them. But in short, it is simply being in control over yourself, not being reactive and not being drawn to the inhibitions of the wild BW. Sure, they may look nice, tasty, and scrumptious to you as the cat, but that's for a reason. They may look very vulnerable and open to suggestion, but that's for a reason. They may look very willing to become part of your structure and your existence, just as such as the rat is seeking to be eaten, but that's for a reason. You have to understand that there are more underlying reasons to the way that they're posturing themselves is to latch onto you and to use you as a host to spread this thing further. And what I mean by this thing is the dysfunction. The dysfunction is the parasite. That's how it is spread. It is spread from generation to generation because it finds hosts. A lot of people don't look at it that way, but that's generally what's happening. That these things are not taught necessarily. They are imbued into people's existence. They are subject to these things. They are constantly bombarded with these things over and over again until they assimilate. This is no different than how the Toxoplasmosis gondii works, because it is a threshold that is necessary in order for it to reproduce within this belly of the cat. You can't just have just a small number of it. You need a repeat injection of these things while it grows inside the cat, or inside the rodent in its numbers. That is the necessary threshold in which it needs to transfer to the cat in whole, because it isn't just eaten in parts, right? It's eaten in whole. And when that threshold is enough, it has enough ability to reproduce itself to the necessary threshold in which the cat excrements it outside of itself to reach another host. This is no different than how I see, once again, the BW and how they react. Look at all the videos that we have of the transmission of these things. You know, the killing of our children, the maiming of our men, the dysfunction and self-annihilation of themselves. No inhibition. They have no fear of you men. The reason why is because they seek to lure you in. They have no respect for you. They have no way of seeing you other than a host. That's how most women see men, unfortunately. But that's just the way it is. We see it all the time. But I'm only here to explain to you how these things exist. Once again, I may make a standalone video about how you can defeat these things. Once again, it's just simply being in control of oneself. But I'm going to talk to it in a more specific way, and things that you need to do in order not to be infected by this thing. But anyways, I want to keep this video short. Like, comment, and share. Check me out on Facebook. Check me out on Patreon. But until next time, this has been a Wolf in Bearded Clothes. May you have a good day. And of course, peace be with you.